Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me for this new edition of Business Africa. On our show today, we cover the developments in East Africa and we find out what will bring a common market to airlines and passengers with Abdurrahman Berté, Secretary General of the AFRA, the Association of African Airlines. But first, let's get on with the show with our top stories today. Becoming aware of customs fraud and fight against it, several countries are taking up the challenge, notably the Democratic Republic of Congo.
I simply believe that fraud feeds the economy of war, and I very much hope that fairly soon we will replace this economy of war with economic warfare.
Flowers take the lion's share of Ethiopian horticultural exports, and its growing success stands up to international competition.
We grow here around 16 varieties with different colors as per customers' requirements, like Everred, Upper Class, Athena. We have around 6-7 hectares covered by red varieties because red is a common variety. Then Athena is white. They have different types of pink colors.
Almost 10 years of existence and 10,000 tons of recycled electronic waste, we put the spotlight on Weee, one of Kenya's new champions of the circular economy.
To date, we have done over 10,000 tons of e-waste that we've properly disposed. So that's to save the planet over 14,400 tons of CO2. We've served over, I think, 8,000 different customers across Africa.
Facilitating transports of goods while curbing fraud, this is the aim of the deployment of an interconnected system for the management of goods in transit, or SIGMAT, adopted since 2019 by several ECOWAS countries. After Benin, Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Niger and Togo, 4 other countries joined the mechanism last year. These are Ghana, Senegal, Guinea and Mali. The big challenge now is to raise awareness in other regions of the continent. Indeed, in the DRC, the authorities are currently at war against fraud. Our correspondent Daniel Michombero went to North Kivu, one of the provinces which contributes the most to the state budget, and spoke to economic operators.
We are at Petite Barrière, this border post between Rwanda and the DRC in the town of Goma in the eastern province of North Kivu, was one of the busiest and most profitable before COVID-19 and the resurgence of the M23 war. On this border, despite the armed conflict, trade between the two neighboring countries continues 7 days a week. On Tuesday, Brigitte Kisuba, president of the shopkeepers of the Petite Barrière, came to ensure that the business was running smoothly.
We are currently clearing a vehicle carrying tomatoes for $100 or 275,000 CFA francs, the same amount for a lorry carrying cabbages and fish, and we declare 2,500 CFA francs per head for goats. All this money goes into the state, treasury, and many other commercial products that I can't mention here. We pay and we fill the state's coffers. As small traders, we encourage the Congolese government to punish anyone caught committing fraud. This person must be punished according to the law. We never encourage fraud in our service. Anyone caught must be severely punished.
Although at war for more than 2 years, the province of North Kivu remains economically strong. Thanks to David Kapuma's local governance, it can count on its economic operators. The financial advisor to the military governor of North Kivu says that some of the province's oil importers have even decided to increase their taxes to contribute effectively to the province's development.
La province Nord Kivu venait d'atteindre The province of North Kivu had just reached a threshold of $2 million a month. This was never achieved before, but unfortunately the war halted the momentum. We have participatory governance which allowed taxpayers to get involved in development projects. With all this positive collaboration and our great surprise, both the authorities and us, the same importers, have just agreed that we should go from 600 franc tax per litre to $1,000 per vehicle transporting petroleum product. Why is this? Because they are involved in advance not only in setting the rate but also in identifying development projects.
However, these good intentions come up against a situation far from transparent at the country's borders. These conditions encourage trafficking, often quite creative, like at the Kasumbalesa border between the DRC and Zambia. A parallel system for embezzling customs revenues has long caused devastating damage. Today, experts agree that customs fraud has declined overall in the country. However, they estimate it still accounts for over 10% of revenue, and they suspect it is financing political objectives and the war in the east of the country.
When you look at the situation in the Congo, yes, of course, there is still a lot of discontent linked to human behavior. That still accounts for 10%, perhaps 15%. But above all, there is the war in the east, which is a veritable fraud machine. Unfortunately, everyone knows it, and it is also killing people. I simply believe that fraud feeds the economy of war, and I very much hope that fairly soon we will replace this economy of war with economic warfare. And so we must understand that instead of committing fraud, there are ways of running a normal, logical and honest economy and generate millions of dollars.
According to the Director General of Customs and Excise, the DGCE, the country's most significant financial authority as at 2023, the crackdown on this embezzlement of precious tax revenue will not be possible without the help of economic actors.
If there are proven facts, we invite operators not to remain silent. When there is an action or reprehensible deed, it must be denounced in real time. Because, goods at the border, thanks to their fleeting nature, don't stay at the border. They leave and circulate.
In March 2023, the Ministry of Finance requested the involvement of several governmental departments, including the Inspectorate General of Finance, the IGF, and the National Financial Intelligence Unit, the NFIU, to combat fraud and corruption. According to economic sources in the DRC, customs contribute up to 40% of the national budget, making it a major issue.
Meanwhile, in the US, senators have recently introduced a bill to extend the African Growth and Opportunity Act, the AGOA trade program, with about 40 sub-Saharan African nations until 2041. The aim is to help them maintain duty-free access to the American economy. The program, first enacted in 2000, is set to expire next year. The bill would update eligibility criteria and would modify AGOA's rules of origin to allow inputs from North African nations that are members of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And good news for two of the continent's biggest economies. Nigeria's and Egypt's credit rating outlook were lifted by Fitch Ratings to positive from stable. In the case of Nigeria, the positive outlook reflects macroeconomic reforms over the last year, while Egypt benefited from a landmark $35 billion investment deal with the United Arab Emirates and additional support from the IMF and the World Bank. The rating agency said that, I quote, near-term external financing risks have markedly reduced. In Ethiopia, horticulture has become a success story over the last 20 years, to the point of being the country's second largest source of export earnings after coffee. What are the driving forces behind this booming business, and how is Ethiopia coping with international competition? To find out more, our Addis Ababa correspondent Tefera Gadamu headed out to the fields and greenhouses.
This includes crops like mint, rosemary, coriander, parsley, thyme, and so on. We have about 22 crops that we are growing here, like herbs. We have got selected vegetables like cherry tomato, sweet pepper, cucumber, different types of lettuce, beef tomato, which is tomato for burgers.
We grow here around 16 varieties with different colors as per customers' requirements, like Everred, Upper Class, Athena. We have around 6-7 hectares covered by red varieties because red is a common variety. Then Athena is a white. Then we have different types of pink colors.
These are two of the 130 growers that are engaged in the production and export of horticulture products. While a few are Ethiopian or joint venture investments, the majority happen to be Dutch companies, followed by Israeli and Indian growers. Organized in 8 clusters, a good number of them are concentrated in the Great Ethiopian Rift Valley, where Share Ethiopia, a Dutch company, and the largest rose grower in the world, is also located. Some are around the capital Addis Ababa, and 5 others near Tana, the largest lake in the northern part of the country. The growers are availing a significant package to the market.
Almost every day we harvest, in average, about 80,000 stems. The volume of export is about 22 million stems per year.
The herbs and vegetables total, we are sending about 30 tons a week. And flower, we are sending about 100,000 to 150,000 stems every week.
And in any given year,
if you look at the data, nearly 300,000 tons of horticultural products are exported.
In the beginning, with the focus on just a few countries in Europe, mostly associated with the home base of the growers, the export destinations were very limited.
It was really very difficult. Even the market, the destination is only Holland.
But in 20 years, much has changed significantly.
We have got whole buyers, so we are preparing products for supermarkets in Tesco, Sainsbury. These are bigger supermarkets in Europe.
If we start from the Northern Hemisphere, it's going to Canada and US. If you look at Europe, it's going everywhere, be it Scandinavian, West Europe, East Europe, all the flowers, the herbs are destined there. Again, if you look at Far East, it's going as far as South Korea and Japan. It's also shipped to Middle East countries as well.
50% we send to Middle East. The freight cost is low because it's near to Ethiopia.
And we are also sending them to the continent, to Nigeria.
With a steadily expanding market, the revenue base is also growing. Here are cases in point.
We are a big company, bringing about 12 to 15,000 million euro to this country, from herbs, vegetables and flowers in general.
If we have the good year, maybe around $4 or $5 million we can get a year.
The total export value for last year fiscal year was about $661 million US, out of which 93 million was generated from the export of fruits, vegetables, services and seeds as well. And the lion's share was generated from the export of flowers, which is about 558 million.
That may not look like a big figure. Last year, neighboring Kenya's horticulture exports reportedly generated nearly 1.1 billion US dollars. And part of it has got to do with the cost of inputs that are largely imported. Here is an example.
In order to raise a very good quality basil that can be sold in the European market, it will take about $1.50. Majority of the cost comes later on from the packaging and from the logistics, which is about $3 more. So all in all, $4.5 per kg crop like basil. So this is being sold with all the additional expenses that we are having, about $7 to $8, with profit margin of 15 to 20%.
But the growers agree that the inflated costs are compensated by the reasonable freight rate of Ethiopian Airlines, which flies to over 100 destinations around the world.
We have Ethiopian Airlines, which is extending its service with reasonable air freight rates. This is also a comparative advantage. As we speak now, Ethiopia is cheaper by $1 per kilogram for air freight to Europe. Every day, a minimum of 2 freighters, 777 freighters are shipping Ethiopian horticulture products. And in the belly of passenger aircrafts, you find Ethiopian horticulture products as well.
And today, in the flower supply chain, Ethiopia is among the top 5 global players and the second largest in Africa. From over 2 million hectares, coffee is generating $1 billion US for the country. But according to industry observers, by just doubling the current production area of nearly 1,800 hectares, the horticulture sector that has generated 200,000 jobs can easily overtake coffee as the leading foreign exchange earner.
Welcome back to the second part of our show. The COVID crisis has come and gone for the African airline industry. African carriers saw their traffic increase by 38.7% in 2023, a result which exceeds the performance of their competitors in America and Europe. Safety is also less of a pressing issue, since last year was the fourth consecutive year without a deadly accident. Yet, the continent's airline industry continues to face significant challenges. One of them is the establishment of a single African air transport market. To talk about it, I'm joined from Nairobi by Abdurrahman Bertay, the Secretary General of the AFRA, the Association of African Airlines. Abdurrahman, hello and welcome to Business Africa. First of all, what is the progress of the single African transport market, the SATAM?
Currently, you have 37 states which have committed to the single African air transport market. However, what we have seen is a very low pace of implementation of the single African air transport market because of lack of willingness from some states and even some airlines pushing their state not to apply because they want to be protected. So since December 2022, the African Civil Aviation Commission has launched what they call a SATAM a pilot and implementation program. And 21 states have signed it. And the objective is to start with the states which are ready and willing to implement.
But what will this common market actually bring to airlines, and especially to their customers?
Yes, in fact, SATAM is about opening markets. So access to markets is very important for airlines and also for passengers because of connectivity. If you want to travel, you need connectivity. Currently, we have only 4 African states which have connection to more than 20 other African states in Africa. This is not enough. And you have 22% of African citizens which have to go out of Africa to connect 2 points within Africa.
At the same time, the public complains about the cost of plane tickets and also about the flight connection problems that you have just mentioned. Will the common market resolve these obstacles, or are other efforts needed here?
We need to have a joint effort, not only from airlines. Also, we need to have effort from all stakeholders, because one of the reasons that fares are so high is because of high cost of environment. It's not only operations costs, we also have taxes and charges. On air transport. In some countries, taxes are very high. Sometimes on ticket you have up to 40% of the fare is taxes. The airlines are not keeping the taxes. As you know, they are paying to states. So we really need to work on the level of taxes and charges. And also the fuel prices in Africa are very high. And fuel is a big part of the operation cost of airline. So taxes and charges is a concern. And also there are many other aspects. For that reason, in fact, in June 2022, at AFRA with the African Aviation Industry Group, we organized what we call Air Transport Sustainability Laboratory in Nairobi. The purpose was to put all experts together and look at what can be done by decision makers to create that conducive environment. We created 5 task groups. One of the task group, 2 task groups were about taxes and charges. One is progressing very well. We have started the trial on free routings across Africa. It reduced flight time for airline. It reduced also the carbon emission for this flight. And we hope that by 2025, it will be generalized on the continent to have these direct flights across the continent.
Abdurrahman Berthe, thank you very much. Nigeria plans to ban person-to-person cryptocurrency trading in the Naira, the local currency. This is what Securities and Exchange Commission Director General Imomotimi Agama said last week. New rules should be rolled out soon, covering crypto exchanges and digital assets custodians. The Director General targeted peer-to-peer platforms which allow crypto investors to trade directly with one another rather than via a central intermediary, and their supposed impact on the exchange rate of the Naira. Nigeria and India are getting closer to establishing a local currency settlement system to facilitate their economic exchanges. In concrete terms, this involves using exclusively the Nigerian Naira or the Indian rupee for the payment of transactions between the two countries. Annual trade between the two partners is around $12 billion. Ghana, where Indian companies have already invested more than $100 million and which exports its gold to India, is also considering this new payment method. Since 2014, the world has produced almost 10 million tons of additional e-waste. This is particularly worrying in Africa. Countries such as Nigeria and Ghana are suffocating under imports of second-hand electronic equipment, 25% of which is already unusable on arrival. In Kenya, only 10% of electronic waste is recycled. In Nairobi, our journalist Jefferson Kahinu visited a social enterprise specializing in the circular economy. The aim is to give new life to used machines or collect precious materials. Take a look.
Kenya is estimated to generate over 50 tons of e-waste annually, and only 1% of it is properly recycled. The pandemic saw more people working from home, increasing imports of electronics, both new and second-hand. Albeit, e-waste management remains a big headache for the country.
So when you have a huge appetite for consuming electronics, there's also equivalent electronic waste that will be disposed.
The carbon footprint of electronics is estimated to be about 3.7% of global greenhouse emissions. Recycling e-waste from landfill reduces methane emissions, which are 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide.
To date, we have done over 10,000 tons of e-waste that we've properly disposed. So that's to save the planet over 14,400 tons of CO2. We've served over, I think, 8,000 different customers across Africa, whereby we are providing them a very safe alternative to existing traditional ways of disposing electronic waste.
The long-term management of e-waste requires companies to have extended producer responsibility to manage the growing number of waste.
But there's still a mindset issue, you know. People don't understand how bad it is. The same way you have people who don't understand how bad climate change is for the planet.
Africa has been used to dump e-waste from other international countries, but some countries, like Kenya, have set up legislation to stop it. Not many African countries have the mechanism of recycling e-waste due to the high cost of machinery required to start similar projects.
We still have countries in Africa who don't have a solution. But where will they take the e-waste? But as a company, we've been establishing partnerships with other African countries. We've set up, or rather we have footprint in more than 15 countries in the continent, whereby we're also building their capacities as we center grows and expands. So some of these countries we have direct operations, other countries we have set up partnerships with players in those countries.
More efforts are needed after the East African Community, EAC, unanimously decided to prohibit the dumping of e-waste in the region in 2021.
We're largely importers, which means we don't dictate the standards of technological equipment that is coming into our countries, which means we have higher waste because the life cycles of these products are shorter. So whereas maybe in the West you'd have a product serving or reaching its end of life after 20 years, here it's taking maybe 5-7 years or even less in some instances. And that generates and exacerbates the amount of waste creation.
Importers and dealers of electronic devices will be liable for treating the e-waste generated the ESC ruled. This will take the prices north, with most imports coming from Australia, Japan, China and Canada.
Achieving circularity with e-waste is possible. The challenge we have in Africa, which Kenya is also, one of the countries in Africa, is that we don't control a lot of production systems that are producing a lot of our equipment. Be it the cars we are driving, be it the television sets we are watching, be it the washing machines we are using, the mobile phones we are using are not even within our control in terms of actual manufacture. And so the challenge lies here. Even with extraction or recovery of useful material from e-waste, we still have to export it to the countries that are producing this equipment for us. Whereas, if we had production lines in country, we'd actually be able to consume that material locally, circulate it back into the system, and require very little virgin material that is needed to top up based on whatever losses we'd have made in terms of the recycling process. But the challenge is we are not in control of our production systems.
Even though e-waste is hazardous and harmful, there are a few situations where it has helped Africa by creating jobs. Currently, Africa's informal e-waste recycling and collection industry brings in between 22 cents and $9 per person per day.
Well, that's it for today. Business Africa is over. I'll see you next week, same time, same channel for Initiative Africa. We'll host Senegalese entrepreneur John Dieme. In the meantime, you can watch this show on our website, africaonair.com, and follow us on our social media channels. Feel free to share, like, and comment using the hashtag Business Africa. Have a great week, and until next time, goodbye.